All right, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Kelly Glover to the Get Clients Now show, guys. On behalf of myself and the Get Clients Now Nation, Kelly, I've already covered your bio. It's a rock star bio, but why don't go ahead and welcome you to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And guys, just real quick, if you Google her name, I Googled her name, and Kelly and I actually just talked about this a second ago, but tragically, thankfully, on one hand, when I Googled Kelly's name, a young lady actually from Utah had been on a business trip in Florida with the exact same name, Kelly Glover, and she was found deceased in a lake close to where she was staying in Florida. And so I thought, I've lost the podcast guest, first time. Thankfully, that's not the case. So if you end up Googling, be sure to check the links. Kelly, your website is thetalentsquad.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll give the link to that in the show notes as well. But if you guys, for some reason, Google her name, just realize that she's not the one who was unfortunately deceased. So give me a little backstory about yourself, Kelly.
I am the one who, however, lost 200 pounds. So when you said I've been Googling you, I thought that's what you were going to say because I went viral for that a while ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the Talent Squad, though. So that's a podcast guest booking agency, and we book podcast tours for entrepreneurs. I've got a background in commercial radio. I was a radio announcer, hosted the Love Song Dedication Show, and then got into podcasting in 2007 and have been guest booking for about 6 years and have opened my own agency. So that's been running for 3 years.
Sweet. So tell me, what brought you to the United States from Australia? You're in Sydney right now, correct?
I'm in Sydney right now, going back to Los Angeles. I come home for the summer. I skip out. I know that you're into skiing, but I'm terrible with snow being Australian. I'll wrestle with a crocodile. I will poke a shark in the eye. As soon as it comes to snow, I'm the Darwin Awards and I have no idea what to do. But I'm about to say that I actually went to college in Ohio. So talking about going to the States, I was there from 2000, so I've been back and forth for 20 years. So yeah, I graduated from school in Ohio, interned in Los Angeles for Miramax, and was a red carpet entertainment reporter doing celebrity interviews. So that's originally how I went to the States.
Sweet. So what was the genesis of losing the 200 pounds? I mean, I actually, probably back when I was in high school, I lost 60 pounds. And my son just lost 40 pounds, but 200 pounds that's like losing a full-size man adult. So how did you do that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was a plus size blogger. I had a blog called Big Curvy Love. And I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I've tried to lose weight my whole life. I'd lose 40 pounds. I'd lose 60 pounds. I'd be fine. And then I put it on and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I got to the point where I'm like, this is just hard to breathe. It's hard to get around. I'm going to drop dead anytime. So I got vertical gastric sleeve, which is weight loss surgery.
Right.
And I've just had my 3-year, we call it surgiversary. And I've maintained my weight for a full year within 5 pounds.
Good for you.
So that was a really big deal. And it's not only changed the health of my life, it's changed my mindset and my entrepreneurial journey as well. So I don't think that it's a coincidence that I opened my own business in the same year that I got the weight loss surgery, and that's helped longevity.
Well, good for you. I'm sure you feel just worlds better not carrying around that extra weight as you were before. Yeah. I'm sure you just feel vibrant and energetic and alive, like totally alive.
Yeah, I do. It's amazing.
So what time of the day is it over there? I don't even know. Is it like in the middle of the night?
No, it's Saturday, so I'm a day ahead. It's Saturday morning at 6:44. I've already done one podcast interview and I've been up since 3:30. So
the Flintstones, the Flintstones come on and the Jetsons follow that. You know the Flintstones are obviously.
Yeah.
We start at 7, so we're going to have to rush through this. Oh wait, that's for me tomorrow. Okay, so anyway, so let's do this because I always have 2 questions that I like to ask my guests. The first question is, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what really was the genesis for you wanting to start the Talent Squad? I know you have a background and you have a history in the entertainment industry, but what was it that really got you to say, because podcasts are really exploding, and podcasters, having your own podcast or being on someone else's podcast is a really big deal. It's a great opportunity to grow your business, but take a minute or two and just give us a little backstory. It's like, what really was the genesis for that?
There were two. The first moment was when I moved back to Los Angeles and I'd been in radio and was trying to get a job in radio. And with this accent, I couldn't. And that's how I got into podcasting. So I worked for another agency. And then I had a Jerry Maguire moment where that agency took their staff in-house. The producing company that I was working for doing network shows, the contract ended. And I went, you know what? I just need to go out on my own. I know how to do the thing. So I had a Jerry Maguire moment. I had one client, I had one staff member, and I started my own agency.
And you've
So
never looked back because you've now
never looked back.
Do you have two locations or just the one? Because I was confused what I saw. I'm not sure if I saw. Do you have two, like one in LA, one in New York City, or just LA?
So yeah, so we're remote, and I split my time between Sydney, Los Angeles, and New York. We
Okay.
find that a lot of our clients have LA. A lot of the shows in LA record live and in person. So since I've lived in New York and LA, I split my time between. They say it's tri-coastal. I don't know about that. That seems a bit far-fetched to me.
That's a
But
lot.
yeah,
That's a,
with being
that's a lot of traveling.
it is. With being remote though, I find it to be freeing because I don't have to be locked down and I can go and, my client's got a book launch and I'm going to be there for the book launch, and there's different conferences and I have the ability to be there. So I'm not locked into 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, working in an office. If I want, as soon as I open my laptop, I'm working. And if that needs to be at 3:30 in the morning, great, I will do that. So I
That's one of the
find it
things that I love about
perfect.
not practicing anymore. I practiced chiropractic for 17 years, but that's one of the things that I really enjoy about what I do. Not because I liked traveling to see clients, because I have a very small select group of high value clients, but I travel around the country with my 15-year-old daughter. She'll be 16 in March. She plays club soccer and also high school soccer. So we're traveling mostly with the club soccer. We travel. High school is usually just, she's only a freshman. She'll be she's a sophomore now. But for the club soccer, we're traveling like all over the place all the time. It is nonstop, never ending. And I couldn't do that if I was in practice. So there's no way I could leave my office. Even with the associate doctors that I had working for me and with me, I just couldn't up and leave my patients. So now that I do this, I've been doing this for quite a while. The freedom that I have doing this is, sometimes if I wanted to work in shorts, I'm not. I mean, I wear jeans or whatever else I want. And so I'm not limited to anything, but this type of lifestyle is certainly not for everyone, but for the people who are doing it, most of them really, really love it.
Absolutely. And I feel the same because I've got a niece and nephew in Australia and they're both under 10 and I'm not missing out on that. And their school holidays are at the end of the year. So I come home, but I don't stop my work. I just change the hours of my work. And I've discovered that I love getting up at 3:30 because my prime productivity is in the morning. So other people's might be at 2 o'clock, but my brain's already finished by then. And I've got staff members who love working at 2 a.m. So for you to be at your best and for me to be at my best, it's not at the same time. And if you want to open your laptop and visit your niece and nephew in London, you should be able to do that while still working. So I believe in prime productivity and being where you are the most, because if you're able to go to that soccer game and open your laptop when you want and get your work done at 2 a.m., why should I stop you if you're still doing the job and loving what you're doing? You're going to be wanting to do that job longer than if you have to show up at 9 to 5 and go to tons of meetings and your brain's already clocked out and you're just looking at the clock till you can leave.
Boy, that would be a nightmare. Having to go to tons of meetings, that whole lifestyle just frightens me. That would be like a total nightmare if I was in the corporate world, having to just be confined like that. But having said that, one of the last question I want to ask before we kind of get into the fun of the show today, I asked this to every one of my guests. Is there an individual, a circumstance, a situation that occurred in your life that really inspired you or taught you the most about what it is that you're doing, or kind of gave you that like inspiration, like I said, or kind of moved you in the direction where you're going now? Is there one person where you could say that person really made the biggest difference for me? And it doesn't have to be professionally. Some people say, my dad really encouraged me when I was growing up, told me I could do anything I wanted to do. Another person would say, like, me and old Dan Kennedy, sat down and taught me and told me, hey, you really can do something with this. So it really could be a school teacher, doesn't matter.
There's two, and one was I was in high school in the 90s, and that's when all the talk shows were around, the Ricky Lake, the Sally Jesse Raphael, Phil Donahue, Oprah Winfrey, and I knew I always wanted to do the talk show type topic, but I knew I was never going to be Oprah or a celebrity. So that's why I got into radio. So I think that has been extremely influential. It just so happened that podcasts weren't invented at that time. I got myself into radio. So that's something that was influential and I was aiming towards, even though it hadn't been invented yet. And the other I would say was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yep.
I picked that book up from the store when it first came out. I had no idea who he was, didn't know what it was, read the book and went, this is ridiculous. Who's doing this? This doesn't apply to me. I'm finding it very inspirational, but it's got nothing to do with me. And then about 10 years later, I went, you know what? Everything that he said in that book, I'm doing. So sometimes you don't know who influences you until it's in retrospect. So I guess, and I'm not saying I did that because of that book, but it's something that I realized that, oh, wow, I'm doing that. That was possible. There was a reason for getting that book. And you look at it and you've applied something that you didn't think was applicable to you or even possible. It seemed so ridiculous to me. So I would say those were the two things.
Sweet.
And you know what? I don't know any of those people. They'll never know me and they'll never know what influence they've had on my life. And I think that's the key to podcasting and anyone's life. You'll influence people you never meet and that you'll never know how you've changed their life.
Absolutely. That's just life in general, but especially with podcasts because of the reach that we have. Now let's talk about podcasts because one of the brings to mind one of the things. I just got an email from a gal at LinkedIn and she said, I'd like you to contribute, get your thoughts on this particular article that I wrote. I want you to comment on it. It's about the growth of podcasting and the potential for podcasting. And I just quickly did some research. And what I found is that year over date from last year, podcasting has increased over 26% for small businesses and professionals, things like that. And the audiences for podcasting has literally doubled like over the last couple of years, multiple times. And so more and more and more people are listening to podcasting. And so I want to get your take on a couple different questions. The first question is, why do you think so many people listen to podcasts? And then the second question would be, why do you think so many people are actually, and it's still, even with all the people starting their own podcast, most of the people I also read don't do more than like 6 shows total before they just bail. Or maybe they do like a show every month or two. So it's not really
fade.
Yeah, it's not like, I guess it's what you call it, but there's not like there's a whole lot of competition, even though there's a bazillion people doing it now. The opportunities for people to do a podcast or to be on a podcast to grow your business are enormous. So talk about those first two, if you can remember, after that long-winded diatribe I just gave.
People like podcasting because it's personal. There's so much content out there. Everyone has access to creating their own. The barrier to entry is low. It's no longer just looking at the hand-selected people that have PR agencies or access to all the TV shows. So the content is now niched and we're able to go after something. If we care about escalators, we can listen to a podcast about escalators by someone who's an expert in their field. So I think it's access to media, but also you get 30 to 60 minutes with someone in your ears. So you get to hear, if you can hear by someone's voice, do you trust them? Do you like them? Do they know what they're talking about? Are they speaking fast? Are they speaking slow? What words are they using? So the transference of the personal brand is completely different than if you were to read a blog post, in which case you may just read some headlines. You might get an idea of their language, but it's not the same as having podcasts are a one-on-one medium. They're in your ears and it's a good amount of time with the person. So I think people like that authentic connection, even though, and it's like listening into a conversation. So you can't necessarily get that reading a post. You can watching a video, but we're finding that people have the captions on the video and also they're not watching the video, they're listening to the video.
Right.
So if you think about all the way going back through history and civilization, it's storytelling. People love listening to other people telling stories, and that's what podcasting is. If you think about it as a medium and a way to deliver a message rather than here's a show, here's the audience, here's the downloads, it will change the way you think about podcasting and how you were saying apply it to your business, because it's not necessarily about here's the show, here's the interview, here's the audience, here's the download, here's the sales. You can use it to meet people, for high-end networking, to highlight your clients, to do a case study. There's so many ways you can use podcasting as a medium in your business, and then to get that information out there and then extract it again. So you pull the transcript, you make the blog post from it, you make the video from it, you pull the quote from it, you put it over a graphic. That one piece of 30-minute to 60-minute content now becomes 30 different things. Or you put it on your email signature and here's a show, or you use it for your FAQs. Here's a client case study, and then you can send that out. So it's answering questions in advance and people expediting the know, like, and trust factor. So it skips ahead 5 steps. So I know I just said a bazillion things, but those are examples of all the things that podcasting can do in your business and in your relationships with people.
Yeah, and the nice thing about podcasting, like right now, we're recording on Zoom. I'm recording on my, on Adobe, on my end as well, because I like my voice to be more clear. But having said that, I'm capturing audio, I'm capturing video. So this is going to go on our YouTube channel. This is also going to go on the podcast channel. And then not only is this going to be on Get Clients Now, but I'm going to take this and put it on .com Dentist. That's a brand new podcast that I started. Wow, it's really shocking for me. I'll just say this quickly. I looked at my stats for that show this morning, and it was frightening because there weren't very many people downloading my show. And I'm a contributor for Dentaltown, so I'm used to thousands and thousands of people for this podcast. And I look at that one and it's like, hey, wait a minute, you're actually doing way better than you did with the Get Clients Now podcast when you first started. I mean, like, it's light years ahead of the other one. And I have an unfair advantage being a contributor for Dentaltown because it's a show for dentists.
Yes.
People who sell to dentists, and Dentaltown is the platform, the largest in the world for dentists.
Speaking about niche podcasts, we've had clients in that realm before. There are a lot of dental podcasts, more than people think. And I think that's the shocking thing about podcasting is people don't realize how many shows there are in specific niches. You don't need 1 million downloads. You just need 500, 1,000 dentists that are your ideal client that will make a difference in your life and your business.
Okay, so speaking of dentists, let's just talk about that for just a second. So let's say that a dentist who is in a local area, got his local market, he's considering or she's considering doing a podcast. Obviously, most of his competition or her competition isn't going to be doing anything like that, remotely like that. I think it's a great opportunity. There's a thing that happens in dentistry with patients. It's called dental fear. And about a third of the patients that go to a dentist, especially if it's a new dentist, are terrified. The thought of somebody probing around in their mouth, or needles or tools or grinding, or, all that, people are literally terrified by that. And so for me, one of the things that I teach our clients is, hey, put some videos on your website. Not just sales promotional videos, but videos where you're just in a casual conversation talking about like why you became a dentist, what you love about being a dentist, things like that. So people can see you, so they can feel like they know and they can trust you more. And if you have your own podcast, I think that's a phenomenal way. Give me your thoughts on that, to actually not only make a footprint or make a mark in the community, but let people kind of see and feel you and kind of handle you and see if they would feel comfortable with you prior to actually going into your practice. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think dentistry is a prime example of a commoditized market where the person is the differentiator. So you're then looking at a personally branded business, and that goes back to your personal branding, and a podcast is a way of carrying that message. So it's how you look, how you act, what you say, what you stand for, who you associate with. Are you resonating or are you disconnecting? Are you a picture of a tooth, or are you a real person that's a dad that goes to the soccer game? And if your kid comes in here, they're not going to be terrified that I've got a drill in my hand and I'm going to scare them to death. And it's also having that clear messaging and the differentiation as opposed to being generic. So yes, podcasting is a platform where you can get it out there, and it doesn't necessarily how to save decay in your tooth. Maybe it's a story from Tommy who lives in your neighborhood, and he lost his tooth and brought it into the dentist, or got it taken out at the dentist, and then the tooth fairy got it and he got $5 in from the tooth fairy. So doesn't have to be technical and stories. It doesn't have to be technical, scientific about the practice. It can be stories about the people that come to the practice or the people that provide the practice. So it could be 2 ways. So yeah, here's the dentist and the backstory and what they do, but also here's the patients and he's fine and you can be too. Maybe it's a tour. Maybe it's here's the thing, here's what happens.
Yep.
Here's the mom. Your mom's going to sit there. By the way, you get an awesome, I don't know. Every time I go to the dentist recently, they have those cool glasses.
Yeah.
So that's something different, and kids like that stuff. And, and there's the TV and whatever it is, whatever is different or what to expect in your practice that people can see in advance. So when they come through the door, you're taking that fear away.
Plus, you could interview, the dentist could interview their staff so people could get to know their staff. I mean, there's just an endless variety of that. And that goes with any business. Now, you just mentioned something that's really not on topic, but I want to talk about it because I'm doing a series on it. And I'm going to be interviewing Parcal right after, like literally a half an hour after you and I conclude. I'm going to be interviewing him. And he has a podcast called The Business of Story. But I've been doing a series on storytelling and storytelling in business. And so how important is storytelling? And I don't mean, fictional stories, but
No.
utilizing the variety of different stories. Podcasting is a perfect platform for telling stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just use the example of a little boy that lost his tooth, or it could be someone who gets dentures or whatever. So you're highlighting your client, but through a story and then I took the number 2 drill. Obviously, I have no idea about dentistry and the technical aspect, and drilled a 3 whatever. So it's the story that carries it, and also your personal story. Who do you stand for? Who have you been serving? How long have you been in business? How long has Barbara been answering the phone? Maybe she's been there for 20 years. Maybe all her kids have come through the dentistry. So it's attaching more, it's taking away here's the service, here's the price, here's what we do, and adding all this to it. So what differentiates you? Because you just assume that Bob down the road dentist is going to do a good job and he charges this price. That's not the difference. The difference is in all the story you attach to it.
Yeah, I mean, every new patient, just referring back to dentistry, and we have a lot of different people who listen to the show. And that's actually why I started .com Dentist, was to try to wean the dentist off of this show and move them over to .com Dentist so I could be a little more tight, a little tighter in my descriptions and a little more focused on just the consultants that I work with. But having said that, when someone, people look at different businesses, specifically dentists, they fully expect that that person does high quality work.
Absolutely.
So to say, hey, listen, we do high quality work. Well, that's like the minimum
Yeah.
standard. That is not a
Yeah.
differentiator. A story
Absolutely.
is what's going to do it for you. And it seems like with specific types of clients that I work with, some of them really get this immediately, and some of them have a more difficult time with it because they're so focused on the medical side of what it is that they do. I was a chiropractor, so I was, like real hands-on with people. I'm very gregarious and outgoing. I love to talk to people. That's one of the reasons I love doing a podcast, because I get to meet the coolest people in the world. And as I told you before we started the show, some of my shows, my goal is to provide awesome content for the people, in the Get Clients Now Nation. But some of my shows I actually do because I'm selfish and I want to talk to that person so that it can benefit me.
And that is another thing about podcasting. Sometimes it's about the guest that you have on the show, getting access to them. And it's not even about the audience. Obviously, you will deliver content to your audience that they care about, but maybe it's getting access to that person. And then you're there getting access to their client base, their network of people, and their audience as well. So it is a warm introduction, because now it's like, hey guys, come to my party. I've got awesome cocktails and food. You're inviting someone and they're having an experience. And with podcasting and stories that you were talking about, it is, it's relaying a message. People can see themselves in the story. They can identify themselves or relate to the story. They can't relate to a number 2 drill and whatever medicine and whatever injection. Like, I don't know what that is. I just assume you know what you're talking about, but I can relate to, I lost a tooth in the tooth fairy and I don't want to get dentures one day, or whatever the thing is. I can relate to that. So I think reflecting what people are experiencing and saying, hey guys, I know that you're scared. It's acknowledging it.
Absolutely. Yeah, people can associate and really put themselves into that situation, patients or clients or customers, a lot easier than they can if someone's saying, hey, listen, this is where I went to school. I'm a graduate of this institute. I have this training. I have this award. Well, who cares? Your clients, customers, and patients don't really, for the most part, they can't appreciate that like you do. So that's, I got my dental degree at this particular institution, the New York College of Dentistry versus the University of Oregon School of Dentistry in Portland. I used to live right down the street from that. So it's a great school, by the way. But telling stories, I think, is fabulous. Well, what I want to do real quickly is I want to do this. There are 2 different ways you can benefit as a business owner, an entrepreneur, a professional like a dentist or chiropractor from podcasting. 1, you could have your own show, or 2, you could be on other people's shows. And those are certainly different. But let's just briefly talk about, because I don't know that everybody listening is going to be enticed into, hey, let's start our own podcast, but I still want to cover it. And then I want to kind of segue into, hey, how important is it that I get on other people's shows? Because that could really be a boon for my business or my practice. So with respect to starting your own show, kind of run through that and talk to us about, without being technical, is that a difficult thing to do? Is it a really expensive thing to do? I mean, I know the answer to that, obviously, but I want to hear it from you.
Not today. It used to be. The barrier to entry is low and it's absolutely affordable, especially if you're a business owner. So the microphone that I'm using now is a basic one. It's called an ATR 2100. This mic setup, I even travel with it. It's less than $100. You can, the way that podcasting goes these days, you can record it into your laptop with USB equipment and upload it and get it going as quickly as possible. So you can get a podcast. It just depends on Apple when they accept the feed, but you can get it done within a couple of days. Absolutely. And you can just put it on your own website. So if you Google how to start a podcast, there's step by step. You can DIY for less than $100. And then if you use, say, Libsyn as a host, it will be $15 a month. So can you afford it? Yes. Can you DIY? Yes. Can you do it quickly? Yes. If you're worried about doing your own podcast in the performance aspect, I say practice in private before you go public. There's any number of apps on any laptop that you can have. Just run the video and practice talking to yourself. Interview your family, interview the people at your practice just to get used to it, and then do it and pop it up online. So can you do it? Yes. Now,
Or you could have one of your staff. I mean, if you aren't
yeah,
the natural person to lead the show, but you have a lot of the knowledge and you would be like the feature of the show, have one of your staff people on there to interview you and kind of be that person to play back and forth with you.
yeah, so that's considered to be an anchor, which
Mhm.
is really a facilitator, is another word for that. So, absolutely. And with regards to being a guest on other people's shows, I highly recommend that. If you don't think that you have the consistency to put out that podcast, and you may pod fade because there are a lot of moving parts to doing a podcast, then being a guest on other people's shows is absolutely an option. You can go, it's like being a guest at somebody else's party instead of throwing your own. You show up, you eat their food, you chat to all the people, you listen to the great music, you go home, and then they're left with the bill of catering, with the cleaning up. That's what being a guest on someone else's show is. Now, you must respect that you're a guest in their house and follow their rules and be a good guest, but you're leveraging their audience that they've worked really hard to build. So if you go on 20 podcasts, you're accessing 20 different audiences as opposed to talking to your own audience and building it from scratch. So I highly recommend the podcast guesting strategy. Even if you think you want to start your own show, if you start out doing it that way, you can see how other people operate and be like, oh, okay, that's their guest onboarding process. Oh, that's the technology. You can learn a lot by being a guest on somebody else's show.
You know, that's a great point that you make. And one of the things that I have taught for the longest time to my clients, one of the fastest ways to grow your business is through strategic joint ventures, where you can actually go and parasitically, I guess is the way some people refer to this, but you can actually go and market to your non-competing business. You can go and they're giving you essentially their endorsement. You can go and market to the people they have a relationship with. And so it's like a direct or indirect endorsement. And the world of podcasting has really opened this up, because the moment you're on someone's show, I have guests on my show. Sometimes I'll have a guest on the show and I was so moved by their book or their training or whatever it was that I will personally guarantee that if any one of my members or anybody in my nation of followers that listens or attends or buys the book, if they're unhappy with it for any reason, or if they don't feel like it's like a great investment, send me an email and I'll pay you back because I recommended it. So that's a direct endorsement. I don't do that often, but the fact that I have someone on my show is an indirect endorsement.
It's a warm introduction. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a warm introduction, and you're saying, hey, Kelly's on my show. She's okay by me. And so there are a lot of benefits to being a guest on podcasts. One, expert status. It's authority. It's credibility. It's reputation. You get known. It's influence. It strengthens your brand. It amplifies your message. Now, in amplification, it's only as good as the message. It's just going to make louder what you're saying. So obviously you need to know what you're talking about. It's the one-to-one access to audiences that are niche, established, and curated, but it's also high-end networking, right? Which is what you just said, which is the relationships with the host. Now, if you go as a guest on someone else's show and you start your own show, guess what? You've already got somebody that you can invite on your show and pay it back.
Absolutely.
But you were saying about parasitically, but you can't, it's not about, hey, I'm Kelly, I want to come on your show, I'm awesome, this is great. It's, hey, you've got a show, I can see this is your audience, this is what I want to teach your audience, this is the value I've got to bring to your audience. So it's not taking, it's actually the opposite, it's giving, and you go in with zero expectation. So you're going in to teach the audience something, and they will like you, they won't like you, they'll come into your ecosystem, they won't, but they need to walk away with actionable content. So they've gotten something out of it. And when you pitch a show, it's not about the host and it's not about you, it's about the audience. There's
Absolutely.
3 people in that relationship. So I might be pitching you as the host, but I'm kind of almost bypassing you and going, hey, you know what? I see that your audience wants to know this and could benefit from this, and I'd like to come and teach your audience that. So I'm the conduit for the message to speak to the audience, and you're the conduit because you're the host. Now, it obviously needs to benefit you as well, and it does benefit me, but I go in with zero expectation. So it's really about teaching the audience in it's podcasts are education and entertainment. I really just like the word edutainment. I think it's
Yeah.
as dorky as anything, but you know what?
It's true. It's
And
true.
all the podcasts that I listen to because I want to learn something, and I love being entertained, and I love hearing people's stories. How did they do that? How did they get where they are? How can I reverse engineer that? What little bits can I take from that and apply to my life? How does that apply to me? So it's a giving mentality.
Yeah. So when I just talked about parasitic marketing, that's the term that people use in marketing. What I was trying to infer is this: the fact that, here's an example. You're on my show today. So
Yes.
whether I said I'm going to guarantee whatever that Kelly is offering, her coaching, or the podcast tour thing that you guys have, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, whether I said that or just have you on the show, the fact that you're on my show tells my audience, hey, listen, we trust Ken. Ken's been doing this now for 3 years. Ken's a straight up guy. Okay. Ken wouldn't have anyone on his show who isn't a straight up person. And so by that, I'm passing my relationship, part of my relationship, the trust factor I have with my audience, directly on to you. And so as a person who could go on to someone else's show, you're not going there. You better deliver value. And that's one of the things that I tell everybody. My first order of business is to deliver value to my nation of fans. And if you can't deliver, you can't come on and pitch your stuff. I'll do that for you. But I think it's only fair. But
And
if
podcasting is, sorry to interrupt,
no, you're fine.
active, not accidental. So people search for podcasts. They don't just, oh, here's a podcast I stumbled across scrolling through something. That doesn't happen. People are looking for that. They're coming to you. And with podcasting, it's also a way of refining your message and practicing your message for the audience. So the way I look at it as well is, do you know what it's like? It's like if a friend of mine's single and I refer someone to them that I know, it's that or it's Tinder. You know what I mean? It's an introduction from someone to someone, or it's a stranger.
Is that a dating site? Because I've been married for so long, I don't know anything. Is that a dating site?
Yeah.
Tinder?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a dating site. So
Okay.
it's someone going and finding the message in the pool by themselves, or going, you know what? This is James. He's awesome. I've known him for 3 years. I think you should go on a first date. That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
podcasting.
Nice. Okay. So let's say that we have people listening who are going to be interested in talking to you, because I know they will be. They want to get more exposure. Talk about some of the benefits, and then we'll kind of move into the process. But what are some of the benefits of being a guest on not just one podcast, but multiple podcasts by design? It's not something that just, hey, if I could get on, I'm going to wait for these people to call me. No, you have to be proactive about this.
Yeah. It's like going to the gym on January 1st and expecting to stay at the same weight and fit for the rest of the year. Doesn't happen. You have to keep doing it. You can't go on one podcast and be like, okay, guys, I've done it now. I've been on the podcast. My business has changed, because podcasting is about consistency. It's about different markets. You're going to get those link backs. You've got to get SEO. You're going to become more searchable. And it's one of those, oh, yeah, I saw Ken. Oh, he was on this podcast. Okay, go about your day. Oh, I saw Ken. He was on this podcast. Oh, okay, go about your day. Then you might see him. Oh, there's Ken. Hang on. Look, I've been seeing him on all these podcasts. I better have a listen. You finally listen. You like it. And then you're like, maybe I'll go into his ecosystem or look on a different podcast. So it's seeing people in different places. And also, if you see, you're like, he must be really important because he's going on all these shows and all the people are having him on the shows. So it's consistency in media, and then also trying to offer something different in every interview you do. You don't want to be a broken record robot just saying the same thing to every audience all the time. So you need to really cater your message to the different audiences. And then people will be like, wow, that Ken, he was on this show, but then he went on this show and he said something different. And I listened to 2 shows for half an hour and I got different information both times. Wow, I feel like he's really giving. So I think that's where the strategy is. And it's like, he knows what he's talking about. It wasn't just a one-off. I hear him that he said the stuff there. Great, said the stuff there. And before you know it, it's basically like they've spent 2 hours with you because they already know you.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves with guests. And some of my guests are like big time guests. And it is frustrating for me when they want to go through, they've got their scripted outline of how they want to pitch their book or their coaching or whatever it is they're doing. And so that's why I try to get creative in some of the questions that I ask to pull them off of that. Because if other people have listened to them ahead of time and know who they are, and then they're hearing the same thing, my listeners are going to bail off my show. And I don't want that. So that's a great tip that you just gave. So let me ask you this.
Any good interviewer, I'm going to interrupt there.
Go ahead.
As someone who used to be an entertainment journalist and interview celebrities on red carpets, they would do literally thousands of interviews. It's called breaking the tape. And because people memorize their answers, they ask a question, they're like, oh, I know the answer to that. They press a little button in their the same answer that they give every single time. And as an interviewer, it's your job to break the tape. And when you break that tape, that's when you get the best, most authentic answers that no one else has heard before. So I don't know if you know that you're doing that.
I hate to do this, run through that again, because remember my fear I talked about at the beginning and Zoom, and sometimes there's like loss of audio. So talk about where you start at the point where you talked about interviewing a celebrity, because you interviewed thousands of celebrities, and then breaking the tape.
So I've interviewed thousands of celebrities. I used to be a celebrity interviewer, movie premieres, red carpets, all that kind of beeswax. Those celebrities do thousands of interviews, sometimes hundreds in a day. So they're answering the same questions all the time. And what people do is when they know the answer to something, their brain goes, oh, yep, great, I know the answer to that, and basically press play, and they just spit out the same answer every time to everyone. It's like filling in a form. What's your name? Kelly Glover. You know the answer, you say the answer. So as an interviewer, our job is to break the tape, so they don't just press play and spit the same thing out. So I don't know if you know that you're doing that, but by asking different questions, you're breaking the tape. You're going to get the best answers from the people, so they don't just spit out the same thing, and you're going to get more actionable items than what they've just memorized and spitting out the same thing, because that's people's natural response. What's your name? Kelly Glover. Like, you know the answer. You want to spit out the answer, but you want to get different information. So I just wanted to say, as an interviewer, you're breaking the tape, and you've discovered a skill that you maybe didn't have the words for, and that you're actively doing. So that's really good.
Sweet. So I know that people are listening to the show and they're like, okay, this is something that I want to do. I have to pursue this. I've been thinking about this for a while. This is actually what you do, is you help professionals and entrepreneurs, business owners of like all different types, get on other people's shows. Why couldn't someone, and we'll dive into that here in just a second, but why couldn't someone say, hey, listen, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to contact these people on my own. And, I'm a very successful dentist, or I'm a very successful Facebook marketing consultant. So obviously they're going to want me on the show. Discuss some of that's not as easy as it sounds. It's not easy to get on, especially shows that, that have traffic and that have been around for a while.
It's simple, but it's not easy. They're not the same thing. So yes, you can book yourself, and there's a few ways. So you're either going to hire an agency like the Talent Squad, like us, to do it for you, or you'll get somebody in-house to do it, a team member. You'll do it yourself, or you'll get a virtual assistant. So what I would say is, if you hire an agency, you're leveraging the pre-existing relationships that they already have, and you've got someone that thinks like a producer and knows how to outreach the media, and your pitch will be correct. So it takes time to source, develop, and nurture those relationships. So that's what you're leveraging with an agency. Now, if you do it yourself, I would just urge you to make sure you've got your messaging right, to make sure you've got your topics, your talking points, that the shows are properly vetted, that you've got your one sheet, that you've got your online press kit, and have everything in order. Because speaking about personal brand, it damages your brand if you send a pitch to a show that you kind of aren't suited to. If, like you said, they don't have guests, if you're pitching something that somebody's already spoken to. When you do the pitch, you have to look back at the back catalog. If someone's spoken exactly what you're pitching to episodes ago, the host thinks, well, I haven't listened to the show. They don't know what content I have.
That's
They
a big
don't know
deal.
who's already been on the show, and they have no idea. So there's a lot of, can you do it yourself? Yes. There's a lot of busy work. So it comes down to, we've all heard this a million times, like, what's your hourly, what's the time worth? For you to learn how to do this properly and figure out all the mistakes, how long will it take you to source, vet, pitch that show, follow up, as opposed to outsource and paying somebody else to do it? That's all it comes down to.
Highest and best
Like,
use of your time. Absolutely.
like, if you know Bob and you already know him and he's got a podcast, yeah, email him and ask. Absolutely. So it just depends on if you want to be represented, and if you're starting from zero or not, and if you have the language. Like, if you're a dentist, it depends what marketing skills you have. I want to come on and speak about being a dentist. So what? Who cares? Don't care. Doesn't make any difference to me. You need to have that subject line. That's not a topic. That's not something that can be pitched.
There's no hook there. No, nothing.
No.
It's just a boring
So
topic.
it's about even just getting the subject line, Ken, because your email won't even get open. You get pitched all the time. If the subject line isn't good, the email won't get open. If the opener isn't good, you won't even read the full email. If you read the full email, the first thing you're going to do is cross-check and verify and do a whip around. If the website isn't good, if the social media isn't good, if the messaging isn't good, you're not going to move forward. So don't make the mistake in thinking that just finding the show and pitching the show is it, because even if you get through the subject line, the email, to the vetting process, all that has to be in place. That they're all like little doors. You get a key, you open the door. You get a key, you open the door. You get a key, you open the door. It's not even the yes. And then once you get the yes, guess what? You've actually got to do the interview and deliver it. So when people say, I want to get booked on podcast, that's awesome. And obviously I think you should, and it will change your business, but that's about step 5. You've got to go all the way to step 1, which is, who am I talking to? What do I want them to do as a result of hearing me on the show? And what can I teach the audience that they don't know how to do, that they will know by the end of the episode? So it's asking yourself those questions up front, and then you'll have a robust podcast guesting strategy. But don't forget, once you've been on the show and recorded the show, you've got to promote, leverage, and repurpose that interview. You can't just do the show and ghost. You've got a responsibility to the host in promoting that show as well. Which everything I've just said is really why podcasting is amazing.
It is amazing. So let me ask you this then. So let's move in this direction. So obviously that's a long list of things that people would have to do if they want to be on as a podcast guest. It's like submitting articles to, like I write for Dental Town. So, I mean, when I first started, they're like, it has to be in this format. I didn't know anything about that. I'm like, I have great content. And they're like, no, we can't accept it like that. There's a certain format. There's a certain process. There's a way to do things if you want to write for us, and this is not the way. We know, okay, great, you're really good at what you do, but this is not the way to do it. So I had to learn that process, and there was a big learning curve there. And so for people who want to get on a podcast, I think the learning curve is going to be a lot longer and a lot more difficult. But let's say that someone wants to not go through all the trial and error and wasting all the time, money, and effort and get all cut up and bruised in the process, and they want to have someone represent them and help them in this process. What's involved in that process? Are you going to kind of walk us through that? In addition to helping them get on shows, do you kind of help them know how to present, be a guest and things like that? So kind of walk through that process with us, because I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, so at the Talent Squad, we've got a bit of a different perspective because I've been a podcast producer. So I've been on the end where I'm the producer, I'm picking talent, and I'm directing guests. And then I've also been an interviewer, and I've also been a radio announcer. So I kind of have a 360 approach in knowing all the elements, because it's not just one thing. It's like I said, it's having the topics and talking points. And sometimes people are an expert in their field, but they don't really know how to package that expertise and push it out to the market. So it's my question to discover, yeah, you're a dentist. Great. I have no doubt that you know everything about that, but I need to ask you the questions and extract those talking points and package them to send them out to the media. So sometimes it's identifying that and also finding the white space in the market. What is nobody else talking about but should be? If everyone's talking about the same thing, then you probably can't go in. You need to find a different angle on that. So it's identifying and extracting your expertise and angles and packaging that into those topics, talking points, and hooks. And then,
Man, you're talking my language. I'm a direct response copywriter. So angles and hooks and all these things you're talking, I'm
yeah,
like, man, this is like copywriting. This is awesome.
yes, it is. It is. It absolutely is. And
Yep,
there's a skill to that. Like for me, it's so
absolutely.
easy, and you can tell me something and I'll send it back and repackage it. That's why
Hmm.
I'm good at what I do. And I love what I do. Where you're like, I'm a dentist. And then you go through it and you'd be like, okay, well, it could end up being 5 ways to calm down a 7-year-old on their first dental visit. That's a thing. That's not, I'm a dentist. Do you know what I
That's a
mean?
hook. Yeah,
It's an
absolutely.
aspect of it that you would know. And maybe you focus on kids and parents. And then that's not to kids. Who's the audience of that? The
The
parents,
parents,
because
the
you know what
mom.
I mean?
It's the mom.
So so it's also knowing who the audience is. So where's moms? They're on mom podcasts. Okay. So it's going to different, or it could be single parent dad podcasts. It depends, or it could be senior citizens. Maybe it's, and then you might go to a retirement village podcast. So there's different, it doesn't have to be dental podcast to dentists. It's looking for where the audience is and what the topics are. And then you're right. You need to do, I would assess, if have you got experience? Do you need to do some practice interviews? Are you across all your topics? Have you got stories? Like you can talk about that, but you know where that really comes to life? With that 7-year-old and the tooth fairy pillow and losing it and all that. Like, you know what? I had a client and he came in. That's where the story is that people can identify, as opposed to 7 ways to do the thing, which I know is the hook. But when you deliver it, you've got to attach stories to that hook. You can't just give facts and figures.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of part of the strategy. And so it comes, I want to get on podcasts. Awesome. But it's all this stuff. And then if your website, and you know what, to be honest, like you've said, I assume dental websites are pretty great. They have
No,
to be.
they're horrible. They're all the same. That's
What?
one of the, oh, they're terrible. They all use the, yeah, when I say all, I'm figuratively speaking here. The vast majority of dental websites, same stock photos, same copies. It's like a
No.
menu at a restaurant. And so when you go to when you land on a dentist website, you're seeing the same images that you're going to see on the other dentist websites. The copy is the same. And so instead of telling stories, instead of having video testimonials, outcome-based video testimonials of patients, instead of putting emotionally compelling stories, just little snippets below the before and after smile gallery images, using direct calls to actions. You don't have any of that on there. All you have is a big menu on multiple pages, like a bazillion different subjects on, 50 different services on one page. It's a morass of confusion. And for me, it's like, you guys are really super awesome and you're super smart at dentistry, but you have no idea when it comes to marketing. And I just actually talked about this, told a story. I'll just tell it very quickly. I had a new dentist client. He, great dentist, very successful practice, paid $3,000 down to $1 billion website company. This is a company that makes websites for dentists, chiropractors, medical doctors, every kind of healthcare you can imagine. But he paid $3,000 down, $900 a month, 3-year contract, non-cancelable. When he hired me to help him with some other marketing aspects, I couldn't find his website on pages 1 through 5 of any Google search that I did. And when I did a Google search for his name, there was another doctor. This is after he had that website for 13 months. Another doctor with the same name who was a podiatrist in another state ranked at the #1 spot in his Google search when I did a Google search with his name specifically in quotes. A podiatrist. And so
Wow.
dentists, for the most part, think that something that is visually appealing, that talks about them as a general rule, is a great website. It's an online business card. Hey, listen, that's not how it works. That's not
No,
how
no,
people choose a
I want to
dentist.
see a picture of Barbara at the reception smiling, and even a video of her telling me how she's worked there for 5 years. Because when I go in there, the first thing I see is that reception, and I see her and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Check. So it's all about checking the little boxes. So I'm surprised to hear that. Maybe it's just the dentist that I go to, because the picture of I don't care about other people's teeth. I only care about my teeth. And if I see someone else's teeth, that a white that doesn't mean anything to me. So
Well, it's
because
just it's a form of social proof. So if you have, outcome-based video testimonials, so instead of the dentist beating their chest saying, I'm a great dentist, I went to this institution, if you've got videos, very short videos with little short snippets of this person saying, you know what, I was
oh,
terrified to go to
person,
the,
yeah. I Sorry, I just meant like the smile teeth, like the
oh,
teeth
no, no, no,
teeth.
no, no, no,
I'm
no,
like,
no,
I
like
don't
real
care about
people.
that.
Yeah, real
Yeah,
people. But
people. I
but
want
they
to see
do.
people.
They do. They use stock images of just a
No,
close-up of teeth without a
yeah.
real person that's not a patient. And then they go to another site of a dentist that's just down the street and they see the same images.
I think people, and especially me as just a regular consumer of a lot of media, I'm instantly suspicious of stock photos now. And I think most people are. Back in the
Absolutely.
day, we hadn't clued onto it. We didn't know. We didn't even know the term stock photo. But now you see it, I'm like, stock photo. It's like, to me, I think they haven't taken the time to produce their own content. That's not them. That's from somewhere else. That's cheating. So I don't know if that's accurate, but just as a consumer, that's how I think. I'm like, and I'll click to something else because I want to see the actual people and the actual practice and the actual inside, as opposed to some rando stock photo.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just say this and then I'm gonna get back on topic and talk about your business, but I use stock photos, but not real images. I use illustrations of retro cartoon-like images in some of my stuff because I love, I study advertising, I study marketing. And so for me, I look at a lot of the older advertisements from like 100 years ago, 80 years ago. I just love the copy in those. I love the pictures. And so I'm really fascinated. So when I find a picture like that, that I can get on maybe Adobe or somewhere else, that reminds me of that. And I think it's pertinent and relevant to maybe my particular podcast or whatever it is that I do, I'll use those. I
So
love
that's like
those.
Mad Men of
Yes.
dentistry. That sounds
Yes.
amazing. See,
Yes.
and this is a great example of using podcasts, which is an audio medium, as a call to action, because you can bet myself and others, I want to see that now because you've said it. So that is now going to make me physically go to your site because you've said that. So podcasts are a great way to use an audio medium for visual. Like I've told you I've lost 200 pounds. And if I said, go and see the photo, you're going to be busting to see that damn photo because that's not something you can hear. So podcasts are a great way to get people from in your ears to on your website if you use a visual call to action.
Guys,
That wasn't my motivation, by the way. That was just telling you about the 200 pounds because of the lady that sadly had passed away in the lake and all the other people. But that's just a good example of how you can do that.
right. Okay. So let's say this. We've got people who are definitely saying, listen, I gotta look this lady up. I've got to go on her website. I want to do this. What's involved in the process? Because we've got about 5 minutes before I have to wrap it up. But I want to get people comfortable going through the process. What do they need to do I know your website is The Talent. Tell us again.
TheTalentSquad.com.
Okay. So what can they expect? Hey, listen, I want to get on podcasts. I want to do this, but I'm not really sure at this point what's involved. So they're going to contact you guys. Are you going to help them get on the podcast? Yes. So we'll talk about that for a second. Are you going to help coach them? Make sure they're going to be a good guest. Make sure they got their content in various forms. They're not going to just be a blueprint of one particular thing. Are you going to help them and kind of coach them with what's all involved and how can you help them? Because I want them to follow through.
Well, the first, I'm going to ask all the questions that I've asked today. So who are you speaking to? What action do you want them to take? What value are you delivering? And what are your expectations? Because people will have different markets that they want. And like, what's your reason for being on a podcast? Can I get you on a podcast? Yes, I can. But if you don't have an idea of what you want out of it, you're going to be unhappy because you're not going to achieve anything because you won't know what that is. So it's having that strategy as well. So my job is to ask questions to figure out what you want, what you think you want, and what you actually need. And then going from there and figuring out where you are. If you have all those ducks in a row, great. If you're not ready, I'm not going to push you out to podcasts and then people will be disappointed. So I would be like, okay, yep, but you need your website in order. Yes, okay, you need, basic stuff like headphones and microphone. Basic stuff like we need to work on your talking points first and your one sheet and your media kit. So it's figuring out where you are, where you want to go, and what you need to be ready to get pitched, and make sure once you pitch, you're ready to record. And once you record, you've got the pipeline on the other side so that people can find you, and then that you can, be ready. Because what if all these people come to you and you're not ready? Or what if the interview go live and you don't promote it? So you've got to have that ready. So it's sort of a pipeline process it's a beginning, middle, and an end, and you've got to have everything ready along the way. So I'll identify, is this something you should be, because if you think I want to go on a podcast and then I want 10 people to book an appointment with me at 2:00 on a Tuesday from that podcast, that's not realistic. So it's what your expectations are as well.
This is, I wouldn't say an extremely long-term play, but it's definitely a longer term.
It's long-term.
Right.
It is a long-term play.
It's a commitment for sure.
Yeah.
And
it's not advertising. And I think
Correct.
That's where some people get a bit confused about podcasting. You're not going to reach Holly, who's a 33-year-old that has a size 8 shoe in Athens, Ohio, and you can see that she clicked 3 times. It doesn't work that way. It really is personal branding, like we were saying before, and a long play, and positioning yourself as the go-to expert in your field. So it's having that consistency, delivery, the platform, positioning, the messaging, making sure you're clear on your purpose, and then delivering you in audio form as a person, as what you do, what you say, how you say it.
Sweet. Here's my last question. And this is the one I ask every single person. What's the one question that I should have asked today that I didn't ask?
That is such a good question. I honestly think you've covered it. I think you've
I stole
covered
that.
everything.
I stole that from Larry King. I actually watched a ton of Larry King videos to make sure I could, because I wanted to do good when I did this. So I watched him and a whole bunch of other people years ago when I first started. I studied him, and that was one question that he loved to ask people. I'm like, I'm going to
Yeah.
steal that.
I think, well, the easy questions for those are, what are the biggest mistakes that people make, or what makes a great guest? But I think you've covered those in everything that we've said. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they will do copy and paste pictures, and they won't personalize it and won't bother to listen to the show. That's 101. And that's something that you can absolutely change.
Listen
And
to the
also,
show that you're applying to be on, that you're asking to be on.
yes,
Listen to some of the episodes
yes.
prior to pitching them.
And the thing about Larry King is he doesn't read the book of the interviewees. Did you know? I love him, and I love seeing how other media people
very
work.
Curious. Yeah, he's really curious. That's one. He really inspired me. Yeah.
But he's great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good. Hey, listen, I appreciate you being on the show today. It's probably going to be 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before I go live with the show, but I'll give you a heads up on it, and then we'll promote the heck out of it and do our distribution. Do you mind if I use this on my other podcast, the interview, the .com?
No.
Okay.
Whatever you need. And did that answer all the questions that you wanted answered, Ken?
Absolutely. And then I'm also going to put this on Dental Town, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The online platform, the magazine.
Yeah. Great.
Sweet. Cool beans.
Great. So good. I think that hopefully the audience got some good benefit from that.
Absolutely. All right, we'll go have some Captain Crunch and watch the Flintstones, and have a safe trip back. When you can have Captain Crunch now, can't you, or no?
Me? Oh no, after weight loss, I just have 3/4 of a cup of food a day. So I just
That's it for the whole day.
That's so hard. This week I'm on coffee and Brussels sprouts. Last week it was coffee and peanut butter. Like, it's pretty not fun.
Are you still trying to lose weight, or is this like a maintenance type?
No, it's maintenance. So what you discover is, I guess that's why I was so fat as well. For me to maintain my weight, I eat 3/4 of a cup of food a day. Like, you don't realize how little it takes. That's to maintain.
What about like nutrients? This is the doctor in me speaking now, but what about like getting all your proper nutrients and things like that, macro and micronutrients?
I've been and had blood tests for 3 years, and my blood tests have been faultless, and I just take a multivitamin.
Well, you look great, and I want to congratulate you on the.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. It's not easy to do, for sure.
It is not.
It's monumental. So listen, if she's willing to work this hard for herself, guys, think how hard she'll work for you. So definitely follow up with her, and give me your URL one more time, and then we're going to wrap.
TheTalentSquad.com.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.